Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unlocking something that pretty much every family historian dreams about finding: membership applications from the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Sons of the American Revolution. If you're researching Revolutionary War ancestry, these records are absolutely incredible. But here's the secret we're going to explore today. These applications, they aren't the treasure itself. Instead, they're more like the most detailed, fascinating treasure maps you will ever get your hands on.
Okay, let's dive right into our roadmap for today. We're covering 5 key areas. First, unlocking lineage society records. Second, differing paths to access. Third, changing standards over time. Fourth, we'll look at a real-world mystery with the Christopher Harris case. And finally, finding aids, not proof. We're going to see exactly how these two distinct but highly complementary tools will totally level up your research skills.
So, Section 1. Unlocking lineage society records.
You know, DAR and SAR applications are among the most frequently consulted lineage records in existence today. Think of them as absolutely essential items in your genealogical toolbox. These files are packed with clues, ancestral relationships, lineage connections, lists of supporting sources that previous researchers have already done the hard work of tracking down. But like any specialized tool, you really have to use them carefully. You wouldn't use a hammer to turn a screw, right? And as we'll see, you just can't treat every society application exactly the same way.
Moving right along to Section 2, differing paths to access. While both of these organizations preserve amazing history, they handle their archives entirely differently. Just look at how access is split up here. The SAR has made a massive number of historical membership applications widely available through partnerships with genealogy websites, like Ancestry. Because these are older applications with minimal privacy concerns, you get wide-open access to just quickly browse the images right from your couch. But the DAR, well, they take a much more structured approach. They don't just dump all the images online. Instead, they built this really robust database called the Genealogical Research System, or GRS.
So you might be wondering, if you can't just casually browse images of the DAR applications online, what does their GRS database actually give you? Well, a ton, actually. You can extract incredible data right from the search: patriot records, descendant information, lineage links, and specific application numbers. But honestly, most importantly, the GRS provides notes regarding lineage issues or corrections. The workflow is basically you gather all this high-level structural data first, and then, if you decide you need the full application and supporting documents, you order the physical copies directly through the DAR.
Which brings us to Section 3, changing standards over time.
Now, this is absolutely crucial. We have to understand the historical context of when these applications were actually approved, because, let's face it, the rules of genealogy have changed a lot over the years. Neither the DAR nor the SAR produced these records under a single unchanging set of standards. For instance, if you pull a DAR application from before 1984, you need to know that supporting documentation was not routinely retained back then, so you have to use extra caution. Similarly, the SAR acknowledges that many applications approved before 2012 might not satisfy today's much stricter documentation requirements. Now, present day, both undergo incredibly strict national-level review. But the main takeaway is that the evidentiary value of an application depends heavily on the specific era it was submitted.
And beyond just the timeline, there's a huge structural difference in how these were reviewed. Historically, SAR applications were reviewed through individual state societies. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it naturally led to some variations in documentation standards depending on the jurisdiction. The DAR, on the other hand, has long utilized a centralized review process. Genealogists really love this because it means DAR files reflect decades of centralized revision. Their files often contain really valuable corrective notes and supplemental flagging if problems were discovered later on.
All right, Section 4. The Christopher Harris case.
Let's look at how all of this builds into a really fascinating mini-mystery using a Virginia and Kentucky patriot named Christopher Harris. We actually have 2 SAR applications submitted nearly 50 years apart for this exact same patriot. Now, both agree on his birth in 1725, his death in 1794, and his parents. But look at these glaring discrepancies. Application 1 says his wife was Nancy McCord with one specific set of descendants and one description of his patriotic service. Application 2, it says his wife was Mary Dabney, with an entirely different descendant structure and service description.
So, looking at these 2 official society applications with completely conflicting information about the guy's wife and family line, you have to ask yourself, which application is correct? Well, surprise, the answer is
both of them. If a researcher had just treated these differences as a battle to prove one right and one wrong, they would have missed the truth entirely. By treating these discrepancies as research leads rather than absolute proof, investigators were prompted to dig a little deeper. And that digging led them to a published abstract of Christopher Harris's 1794 will, which proved he simply had 2 wives during his lifetime. The different applicants were just tracing their lines back through different spouses.
So the crucial takeaway here, and if you remember one thing, make it this. Multiple lineage society applications should always be compared, rather than viewed in isolation. Agreement between applications highlights long-standing family traditions, sure, but differences? Differences highlight changing interpretations, or maybe a complicated family tree that really warrants more investigation. Basically, never just download one application and call it a day.
And that brings us to Section 5, Finding Aids, Not Proof.
Let's anchor everything we've discovered today into some rock-solid genealogical methodology. DAR and SAR applications are what we call derivative sources in the biz. A derivative source is just material produced by compiling information from other original sources. Now, don't get me wrong, this definitely doesn't mean they aren't valuable. In fact, lineage applications might preserve information from a courthouse that burned down 50 years ago, or a family Bible that has literally decayed to dust. They preserve incredible evidence that might be lost forever otherwise. But, by definition, they do not constitute primary proof themselves.
Okay, so here is your best practice workflow for synthesizing your research and breaking through those frustrating genealogical brick walls. Step 1. Search SAR applications on Ancestry first. It's super fast, you can browse images right away, and it gives you really broad clues and collateral relatives. Step 2. Cross-reference that patriot in the DAR GRS database. Check for any lineage notes, flags, or historical corrections that DAR genealogists have added over decades of that centralized review we talked about. And finally, Step 3. Take all those amazing clues and verify the claims through independent, original records whenever you possibly can.
You know, treating these applications as finding aids instead of final proof isn't just a friendly suggestion. It directly aligns with the genealogical proof standard. This is basically the golden rule of family history research. The standard requires thorough documentation, it demands that we correlate all evidence together, and it necessitates the resolution of conflicting information, exactly like we saw with the Christopher Harris case and his 2 wives.
So I want to leave you with this thought. What hidden clues and undiscovered ancestors are waiting for you right now, just hiding inside the discrepancies of these lineage society records? I highly encourage you to go back to your research. Look at those supposedly conflicting files with this new analytical perspective. Embrace the differences, compare the applications, and let the DAR and SAR guide you to your next great genealogical discovery. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and happy researching.